Yeah, really good terms.
We welcome you all to meet the candidates tonight. We're the North Logan Youth Council. I'm Mary Allen. This is Shelby Allen. This is Callie Carlson, Charity Reese, Lydia Bundy, and Grace Rep. We welcome our candidates, Buzzy Molokel, Mark Yancey, Jenny Whiteley, Kenneth Reese, Brad Kirkston, and Roger Anderson. We will give each candidate 2 minutes to introduce themselves, after which we will have a question and answering period where we will ask submitted questions and allow each candidate 1.5 minutes to answer. We will provide each candidate a time remaining prompt at 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 15 seconds. We will alternate so that each candidate has an opportunity to answer each question. At the end of the meeting, each candidate will be allowed up to 2 minutes for concluding remarks. Buzzy, we'll start with you for the 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
All right, nice to meet you all. Thanks for being here tonight and putting this together. And thank you to everybody here in the city. Oh, I forgot to ask, is there going to be a visual timer? Do you guys have a timer? Okay, cool. Thanks for everybody coming out tonight. It's there's a lot of interest in this election and it's fun. And I often joke in our city council meetings, we might have 1 or 2 seats filled. So if there's a few more nerves tonight, we're not used to having a big crowd like this, but my name is Buzzy Molokel, and my wife and I have lived in North Logan for 20 years. We actually built our first home right here in Aspen Meadows. We have 4 children that we raise here, and we now live in the Wildercrest neighborhood. Just our cemetery is our backyard. So I kind of made an off-color joke, and I'll say it again. It's the quietest neighbors we've had yet since we've lived in North Logan. But I've been on the city council for 4 years, served on the planning commission before, also as the co-chair of the planning commission. In my career, I work in healthcare. I've been with Intermountain Health for 23 years. Started there while I was really young at Logan Regional Hospital. And I would just say that I'm really excited about the candidates that are here tonight. We've gotten to know each other. And this is a great group of people running that really care about the city. And that is the most important thing to consider when you make your selections. And hopefully tonight goes well and we can share our vision with you. But again, it's just an honor to be here. It's really a privilege. And I'm excited to start tonight. Thank you.
Good evening, Mark Yancey. I'm excited to run. I'm running because I raised my family here and the city's been good to my family. We've been Knights, we've been Dragons, we've been Wolves, we've been Aggies. And we just love the coaches, the teachers, even the police that have pulled over my kids once in a while when they have been driving. They've been good to have local people take care of this community and watch over us and to be part of this special valley. I was at a meeting where someone was recent to the valley. People were talking about how lucky we were to be here. She changed it and she said, no, you're blessed. It's a blessed place to be. And we have a stewardship to watch over that. I'm concerned that powers from Salt Lake and the legislature are trying to impose Salt Lake values and growth upon us. They want us to all grow up and be like Layton. And that pressure concerns me. I want to be there and use my experience to help be a voice against that, to make sure that as we grow and as we develop and as we plan, that we do it with our values and our cores and not be told what to do. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jenny Whiteley, and I've lived here for 22 years, and I really, really enjoy living here. And that's the main motivation for why I'm running, is I would like to continue to enjoy what North Logan has to offer. And as Mark Yancey said, we are greatly blessed. The quality of life that we experience in North Logan is directly tied to the values that the people, you in our community, hold. And it's also directly tied to our physical surroundings. So North Logan City is known for having a small town rural feel. And that is in large part due to our open space and open fields that we have. So my hope in city government coming onto the city council would be to have a focus for preservation and protection of open space instead of a focus for growth and development. And I do realize that that's a very complicated issue because I'm also a full supporter of private property rights. So it's going to take creativity. I definitely have creativity for that. And I would also, coming onto the city council, like to counsel more with residents. I firmly believe that The line of authority is the people coming to the city council to have the city be what they would want, instead of the city council telling the people what to do. And I would definitely want to counsel and have that input from city residents going forward and have that be more a part of decision making. So thank you for coming out tonight.
Okay, my name is Kenny Reese. Nice to see everyone here. Love to see the involvement in the election. I'm running for city council because I'm deeply invested in this community. I've worked in North Logan for over 20 years and lived here for approaching 14 of those years. I've raised kids here. My kids have gone to school here. If all goes according to plan, I will never move again, and this will be where I live the rest of my life. So I want to make sure to see that our community continues to thrive and that this quality of life that we have here is maintained. My background is in engineering, actually. So I got a bachelor's and a master's degree in engineering, in electrical engineering. And then right out of school, I went to work for the Space Dynamics Lab here in North Logan. And I still work there now. I bring up the engineering background because I do think that it's kind of taught me some skills that I think would be useful on the city council. It really teaches you to be thorough and deliberate in how you approach problems, and that you can inform yourself on all sides of an issue before jumping to any conclusions. And I think that will be applicable here on the city council. More recently at Space Dynamics Lab, I am currently the deputy director of one of the 3 program executing divisions there. So that's also taught me a lot about how to manage tight budgets, how to negotiate solutions, how to resolve conflicts and build teams together. My priorities, again, for the city, it's no different than what you'll hear from in the candidates here. Growth, like we just need to figure out how to balance the great demand for housing with the finite resources that make this such a great place to live, like open spaces, water, clean air, those types of things that we need to be very careful to maintain. And so that would be my priority here. Ultimately, I can tell you I've got a lot to learn, but I'm willing to learn. I come to this position free of any conflict of interest. I really just want to do what's best for our community. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Brad Crookston. I consider myself a principled conservative, and I like to say principled because I believe in the principles of the Constitution, and I think they're extremely important as you govern. I grew up in North Logan, and I feel like there's no better place to live than North Logan. The high quality of life here it's been built around the open space we have, the location we have, and it's, of course, the community has made it just the great place to live. And because it's such a great place to live, the cost of living is here, and I'm committed to keeping North Logan great and not trading North Logan in for these housing initiatives, for not giving up what North Logan is in the name of affordable housing. I believe North Logan's a great place to live. I went to school at Utah State University, and I earned a master's degree in civil engineering there, which I believe uniquely qualifies me to help in a city. I've been a former member of the Planning Commission, as well as the City Council. I've attended City Council meetings, Planning Commission's meetings for nearly the last 12 years. I haven't missed that many of them. I've lived my whole life here, and I have a strong heritage here, and I'm committed to preserving North Logan and keeping it a great place to live. And I'm committed to the principles of the Constitution and living by them. And I'd ask you to vote for me in this election. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Roger Anderson. Lived in North Logan since I was 8 years old, so over 38 years of my life. Raised my family here. Actually bought the home I grew up in from my parents. So again, like everyone said, great place to be surrounded by majestic mountains, and obviously with that comes everyone wants to live here. So there's a lot of issues on hand that people are concerned with. Whether I know that my experience on the city council for the last 3 terms has given me a lot of learning, also eye-opening things of things that limitations we have, but also opportunities we have. So people ask, well, why are you running again? Again, I think we get great things done on our current council, and I want to continue working in that. I also am grateful for the opportunity to work with you guys as citizens. I think that's, again, has been echoed here, that we get better things done when we have input from the citizens. And Buzzy kind of joked again, I know, you elect us and want us to make decisions, but it is nice to have input and also input given when we're not in a heated moment when there may be some decision affecting somebody. So again, I've appreciated working with the community on that. One thing I do commit is that as my time in the council, we've done our best to be fiscally responsible with the precious resources of tax dollars that we have. We have very limited. We have, we're expected to come in with a budget underneath, becoming under budget. So I'm committed to that, but I'm also committed to what is necessary, needed for the future growth, because it will happen. And, but also maintaining, we keep talking about open space and rural, and we have over 150 to 200 acres. So how do we look at that of open space right now? And how do we balance the need for people coming here? So I'm committed to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That will lead us to our first question. What do you think is the most important issue facing North Logan City during the next 4 years, and how would you remedy it? Buzzy, we'll start with you.
I get to go first all night?
No,
I'm just kidding. Totally playing with you. Yeah, I think without question, it's growth. I know what I suspect you're gonna get the same answer from everybody. And what's really hard with growth, and I actually mentioned this on and I was late, so apologies if you didn't get one of my handouts. It's back there now, but I can talk to somebody in the city 1 minute, they'll tell me how much they want the rural field to stay in the green space, and I agree. And in the same sentence, they'll be upset that their grandparents and kids can't find affordable housing here. So it's really easy to say we don't want growth, we want green fields, or that we need affordable housing. And the answer is probably in the middle somewhere. And so the hardest thing for anybody, any council member, any mayor, even city staff, is to figure out the right balance for that. And it takes a lot of input from residents, to be quite honest. It takes pressures from Salt Lake and keeping those in check and working with your local legislators to make sure they're not pushing rules down on the cities that are unfair. And we do have some of that going on. Mark alluded to it in his opening comments. So for me, it's growth. Most important, though, is how we handle that together collectively as a community to make sure that, my family would not be here today if somebody didn't develop a piece of land in this city. My 4 kids have a wonderful life, far better than I ever had growing up, simply because we live in North Logan. And so I'm partial to that because I want them to have a good life. And I suspect everybody in this room feels the same way about their own children and grandchildren. Thank you.
It's growth. It is, and it's how we grow. We're going to grow. I mean, the reality is we will grow, but we should be able to grow consistent with the voice of the residents that are here. There are a lot of people, a lot of money that want to dictate growth, and they found an effective way to go to the state legislature and impose. There were a lot of 23 bills went before the state legislature this year. Several of them passed that try to tell cities how to be cities. And we need to be able to defend against that. We need to have experience that understands the law, that knows how to navigate those lines, knows how to build a case of facts and analysis that will stand the test of pressure from others, and to advocate with the state legislature to say, let us be North Logan. And as we grow, let us grow how we want to grow, and let other cities grow how they want to go. So my focus will be to help protect our voice, protect our desires, and to work both for you and to work with the legislature down the state to make sure that we can be who we want to be and grow up like we want to grow up, and not everybody be like Layton. Thanks.
Again, the answer is the issue is growth. And I think we could all recognize that growth unlimited is not healthy. You and me, if we grow up or sideways unlimited, that'd be a really bad thing. And we are limited in our resources, we're limited in our space, and we're limited in our water. So we can't continue to grow unlimited. And so that's where I would have the city focus be on preservation. And people ask, well, how could that even be? And I think one very first aspect would be we have people in our community who value open space and it's their private property. And the first thing that the city could do to work on preservation, which would work with balancing growth, is see how the city is helping or not helping these people who own the land and have the agricultural fields that we all enjoy. And if there's things that the city's doing that's making those people who enjoy their agricultural land and farming it, if that's hard for them, then we as the city should take a look and review that. And that's one way we could work on preservation and have that be a focus instead of this unlimited growth, which is never sustainable in any form.
Okay. Last time, the last Meet the Candidates night, when we had this question, I was the very last person to answer the question. I didn't want to just sound like a broken record. So I said, I think the most important issue is what flowers we plant out here in front of the library. But actually, in reality, I think it's what everyone else is going to say here, that it's growth. I guess what I wanted to talk about a little bit is so it's easy to say we were concerned about growth in the city, but what tools does the city council have at its disposal to grow in an organized way? And one of those tools is the general plan of the city. So I think I failed to mention when I introduced myself, I'm the current vice chair on the planning commission and also one of the members of the city committee that right now is working on finding a contractor. The city was able to obtain some grant money so that we can get a general contractor to help us rewrite the city plan, the general plan, in a way that the growth that will happen is done the way we want it to happen, done in an organized way where we can actually control that. And in a way, a close corollary to the growth is water. So how do we grow in a way that we're maintaining water resources, not just for the current time, but actually a sustainable way where we're actually accessing water sustainably so that future generations are not dealing with some of the water problems that we're dealing with now.
Yeah, it's obviously growth. It's probably what brings most people here it's the only thing I've ever really seen fill this room is zoning changes, which is related to growth. If anybody's grabbed my pamphlet, it's one of my main points is there's no better place to live in North Logan, but depending on how we let things go, it could change significantly. In 1990, when I grew up in North Logan, there were 4,000 residents or so. Today, there's about 11,000 residents. So the growth has been significant. The way I kind of jumped into politics was on the planning commission in North Logan City. And I was there serving on the planning commission. I'm actually not sure how many years, but quite some time. And I believe we have a great general plan. I think the way we manage growth is we hold to the general plan that we have. There's definitely some items that can be tweaked in it. I'm very concerned about hiring a contractor outside of North Logan City from Salt Lake or anywhere else to rewrite that general plan. I think North Logan City needs to, the planning commission's well equipped. They're the members of our city. We've done it in the past. When I was on the planning commission, we looked at many sections of the general plan. And I think through that general plan, we need to keep the vision of North Logan City. And it's really important to me.
I'll call it different than growth. I'll call it smart zoning and land use. So it ties into growth. One thing I know from when I first ran, and I kind of ran on keeping the rural feel, and I guess you have to define yourself, what is a rural feel? With the demands that we've had on private land ownership rights and people coming in, it's illegal for us as council members in times to just say you can't develop that. So there's limitations that we are under that we have to, but and I think I have shown this on my decision making that when done correctly, and do we get it right all the time? No, but when done correctly with citizen input, again, that's part of the general plan. Whether with the hiring of a contract, there's also citizen groups for what areas are affected. There is power in the people and what they're saying and getting involved. So I think, it's done through good, develop, plans that have walkability with open space, with the ability to have some say in it. I do feel that the city should not be into the purchasing and development business in some ways. With an acre of land going for $100,000, I don't know if that's the best use of tax resources to purchase land and try to preserve, but we've done well with our parks. We have some of the largest parks, and that does help preserve open and green space. So.
Thank you. Our next question is, since declaring your candidacy, what city meetings have you attended or watched, and what have you learned needs to be addressed? Mark, we'll start with you.
I attended recently a public hearing that was on the development of a large student housing complex that was near the house, near my house in the neighborhood. Tiff and I were out for a walk and saw the signs. We needed to get involved. We encouraged others to write their opinions and present them to the planning and zoning and make them part of the record. And it was neat to see a room like this come and express their desires, their concerns about a project that had a lot of money behind it, but didn't have the neighbors behind it. We successfully presented our positions, and the plan and zoning opposed it. It was good to see how the citizens can be involved in that zoning process. That's when discretion, that's when policies are weighed. Oftentimes we wait too late and we try to talk about it, the application of a development after the zoning is done. And so my goal would be to help the citizens get involved early, to be part of the plan, to be part of the law that regulates applications, and then to make sure people follow those rules. I have a lot of those details on my pamphlet. You're welcome to pick one up at the end. There's a QR code that gives you a lot more detail about what I think we should do. Thanks.
Could you ask the question again?
Since declaring your candidacy, what city meetings have you attended or watched, and what have you learned needs to be addressed?
So since declaring my candidacy, I have not attended city meetings. I have attended city meetings and planning commission meetings in the past. And that's one reason why I'm running, is because, and I've heard this expressed as I've been running and talking to a very random selection of people, is that many residents, including myself, feel like there's planning commission meetings. You go in, you have your say, and then nothing happens. So I'm very happy that Mark had a different experience, but that's been my personal experience, is you have your say and then you leave feeling like things will just continue onward and you had no impact. So that's one reason why I'm actually running, is because I want to have people actually feel like they have an impact and actually are part of the decision-making process, instead of having that frustration, which some of them have expressed, where they just stop coming because they're like, there's no reason to come. And I've talked to several of those.
Are we just going in a line? Okay. All right. So I have attended a number of city meetings since declaring my candidacy. I am on the planning commission right now, so I've obviously attended the planning commission meetings. I'm curious about that input, actually, that the planning commission, that people feel like their input doesn't matter. Because I can tell you, as a member of the commission, coming to a public hearing and seeing this room full like this is amazing. Like, public input does matter, and it does influence decisions that are made. Absolutely. I've watched city council meetings as well, and I'm in regular communication with the city council and the mayor on some of these issues. And then, like I said, in the last week, I've had many meetings on this general plan update, and then the contract. I didn't want to clarify Brad's point. The city is not just handing this over to an outside contractor from Salt Lake and saying, good luck updating the general plan. There is going to be absolutely heavy involvement from the planning commission, from the city council, as well as public input. So most of the discussion we've had with these contractors is, how are you going to get public input to update the general plan? The reason why we're doing a contractor is because it's a heavy lift, and also the contractors know how to update the municipal code in a way that it will hold up in court, much more than me, an engineer, knows the right legalese to put into the city code.
All right, so city council meetings I've probably attended this year I don't know the percentage, but most every city council meeting, I've missed 2 or 3 meetings probably. I was also at the meeting Mark mentioned, and I was glad he was there. We were able to explain why that code was in place. I think a little bit is the zoning was put in place while Mark and I were on the planning commission. So I try to be at the city council meetings. It's a lonely place because I wish more people would come, but there's usually 4 or 5 people in the audience. What I've learned there is, there's a lot of issues going on in North Logan City. The most important issue, obviously, the zoning is people are concerned, but I feel like the public isn't getting their input put into the decisions. I'm not suggesting that the council or the planning commission doesn't want to, but the public doesn't have a great means to inform their elected officials about what's going on. And I want to change that and give the general public more time to explain what they think should happen. So.
I guess answer for Buzzy too. I have the advantage of being on this current city council and attending city councils for the last 12 years. What do I see as important issues now? And I've seen it slowly change. Obviously, there's growth and there's important things there, but I think there's a lot of concern with infrastructure, whether that be with water. How are we looking to future water, public safety? I know that there's probably there's many types of citizens, but a lot of the citizens, that I talk to say, that's why I elected you. I'm hoping that you guys are making good decisions for me that makes sense. So I'm happy to represent that, but I also think we could use more input. And I think a lot of that input, I think, is done through, not in a city council meeting when the decision is being made. It's done, whether that be through email or, rubbing shoulders in the community. And I do feel that through my service, I've been able to do that. I tell people, if you're living next to an empty green alfalfa field, it has some concerns. So what is that zoned? Because it, depending on the pressures on it, what does that need? And we can answer that. So I think it's important for us as council members, we're voted in to make those decisions for you. And I commit to do that. But I also believe that, I strongly advocate for citizen involvement in things.
Cool. Yeah. And obviously being on the council, attend all the council meetings. Also, I don't know if you know, but North Logan's meetings are all public. We have a camera system right here that works great. And so I'll even join planning commission, sometimes in person or virtually. But what I've really learned is that it's more than just city. For example, we had a tax increase a couple of years ago, and this room filled with people. And the portion of North Logan City's increase was about $11 for the year on the average home for the year. But the way the county was assessing properties, taxes went through the roof for everybody. And that really got me engaged in understanding I can't just be focused on North Logan City, because so much of what we do in the council is directly affected by what the county does or by what the state does. And over the last 2 years, and I wouldn't recommend this unless you're really bored, I dial in now to state legislative sessions. Yikes. You really got to have some patience. You got to have a cell phone next to you to try to entertain yourself for some of that. But I would just, for anybody that gets elected on this table, understanding that it is more than just sitting, you've got to commit your time to what's going on across the state and the county is really critical. The last thing I just wanted to hit on, if hearing that people's voice don't feel like they're being heard is that's really hard to hear as a council member, at least for me. That's one of the things I ran on, 6 years ago when I ran for the first time. And that's really critical. And just a really brief story is we actually did have a rezone in near Mark and Kenny's neighborhood 6 years ago, where the residents we declined it. The residents worked with the developer and the rezone happened because the residents approved it. There were about 100 people that came to that room one night and one person was opposed. And so voice does matter. Thanks.
Thank you. That gets us to our next question. One key to being an effective council member is having a good relationship with city staff, including department heads. Example, parks, recreation, public utilities, roads, library, police. How would you foster communication with city staff? Jenny, we'll start with you.
That just goes back to communication. So with a city, as a city council member, you do not know all the answers. And I'm very aware that I do not have all the answers. And so I need to be aware of the people who might have more of expertise in the area and be willing to talk to them. So I think humility is a huge part of that. And I am a person who is very keen on asking questions. I'm currently at Utah State right now in my PhD program in physics. And I am known as the person who asks questions. And so if I do not know something, I'm going to find somebody who does know about it. And that can be city staff, that can be people within the community. But the key is communication and being humble and asking questions. And again, I ask questions. I like to go to the source, and I like to find out what people know and add that to my decision database.
Okay. Yeah, I like that question actually, because I agree with you. For a city council to be effective, you need to have very good working relationships with the other city council members, the mayor, the city staff. And I do feel like I have very good working relationships with all those people. And, you know, Alan is our city administrator, Scott, with me being on the planning commission, our city planner, Scott Perks. I work very closely with him. I've had discussions about public safety with our former police chief who's retired, Kim Hawks. I'm working to establish that same communication with the current police chief, Goodrich. And, you know, I think I can tell you I have great working relationships with all these people, but I guess I would encourage you to ask them how they feel like our relationships are. And if they feel like it's bad, then maybe you shouldn't vote for me. But if it's good, maybe you should. Last thing is I've told people, like, campaigning is not my favorite thing in the world. Like, putting yard signs out is frustrating to me. But my favorite thing about campaigning has been talking to people, getting to know people, like getting to know what they're thinking, what their concerns are in the city. And I love that. So I feel like I am pretty good at building those relationships, listening to people, hearing their concerns. And yeah, public input really does matter. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of people will probably say the same thing. It's just getting out and talking to them, understanding what they're doing, trying to come up with ways to help with whatever their department's in charge of doing. I think we have a lot of great people in North Logan that work for North Logan City, the departments. We have a great police department. The fire service that we get from Logan City is excellent service. All this comes at a cost, and it's getting out, talking to the people in these groups and understanding what they're doing and trying to help them. And it's kind of just being out with the people is how it's the same with any relationship. You just have to spend time with those that you work with and try to understand what they need. And that's what I do, and that's what I'll continue to do.
Relationships are important. I think that's maybe one big reason I reran was I worked under 3 different mayors. I feel I have gotten along with everyone that I've worked with. So it's important to me, one, that we get along, because when you get along, I think better discussions, we have different opinions, and I'm not going to lie, there hasn't been heated moments, not bad, but that's where we differ and we get to decision. Also, relationships with some of the committees I'm assigned to. I feel I have a good relationship with I'm on the police commission currently. A lot of that area has changed a lot. So I've learned a lot and tried to provide input to staffing and help there. So I think that's important. And I know all the staff, and again, that's one reason you want to make it better, because the people that make it better are the people who do it full time and who go in and do things on a fixed budget that people do with larger budgets that don't do as much as they do. And it's having great, employees. And I think I've done my best to appreciate that and also contribute to making North Logan a better place for them to work, whether that be benefits that we've looked at. We try to be competitive on, especially police commission, with pay, which is hard when you're in a fixed income as far as taxes. So I commit to continue getting along and working with those that I'm elected to do.
Yeah, I always kind of joke that the city council and mayor get to be the pretty face of the city, or in my case, the funny face of the city. But the real work happens behind the scenes with the city staff. There's no question about it. And I can maybe just show this example by telling a story that happened this year. We did a day in the life with the roads department, and we hung out on 16th East, and We watched cars. I mean, probably all of you have had your roads maintained, and it gets very frustrating when you can't get to your home. One of the employees pulled out his phone and showed me a car run through the barrier and almost take out one of the employees because of his frustration. And you don't really understand that till you see that. That's completely out of line. And it really hit me hard that as elected officials, there's a line that we don't cross, that we have to make sure we're protecting those that work here that make the city so great. Because at the end of the day, we're here for a short term. Many of these employees, Alan is going to be here for 55 years. I guarantee you that. You can hold me to that. But really the city staff are what make everything go. And I'll just call out July 24th. If you've ever spent the day in the city on July 24th, 80% of that is city staff running that. If you've ever had your kids or grandkids in the recreation programs here, 80%, well, call that one more like 99% of the staff are running those programs. So all the stuff that you see when you head down here to the recreation area, that's all city staff that's putting that together and committing many hours outside of their normal time away from their family. And every elected official needs to understand that, really respect that.
It's neat to be part of a team. On planning and zoning, we worked as a team with staff, worked a lot with Alan. We've done a lot of years of working things together. And when you work as a team and you understand roles and you understand the skills that they bring, you respect those skills, you seek input from them and you support them and you have their back and you do all that you can to make them succeed and help them succeed and know that they're doing the same for you in that process. As an attorney, we have this word in litigation called discovery, and it's just a neat word that you discover things. You get to find something out that you didn't know. And as a member of the city council, you're constantly being brought things to teach you and to have you learn and understand new things from the city staff, from those that spend their careers doing that. And we get to learn from those experiences and then apply those with the voice of the people and come up with solutions that are based in good, solid understanding and a voice of the people. So we work as a team and we discover together.
Thank you. Our next question is, what can residents do voluntarily to better improve the city of North Logan? Kenneth, we'll start with you.
Okay. So I think first of all, and Mark and Buzzy and a few people have alluded to this, be aware of who you're electing to state positions. I know that sounds weird because the question was, what can we do to make North Logan better? But as has been mentioned here, there's been a heavy influence from the state legislature to kind of force municipalities to do things that we may not feel like are best for our particular situation. So I guess first and foremost, be an educated voter for every position, including state positions. And then at the city level, I'll say this again. I know I already said this, but I'll say this again. Public input absolutely does matter on any situation that comes before the planning commission and the city council. So please pay attention that the city will post the agenda for each of those meetings well in advance in the city newsletter, online and everything. Please be an active participant. Come, like has been mentioned, usually there's 2 or 3 seats filled in this room, and we would love more input, more involvement there. If nothing else, there are volunteer positions. Go coach a basketball team on the North Logan Rec or something. There's many opportunities to serve in that position, and just North Logan is such a great place because of the people that live here, first and foremost. And so, be an active participant in that, and there are great rewards for that.
Well, sometimes it's the questions, everybody has kind of a similar answer, but I believe North Logan is great because of the citizens here in North Logan. It's really with a different group of people, North Logan wouldn't be what it is. And I would say the residents continue to come to meetings like this. I wish we could have this wish we needed even a bigger room to have it so we could get more residents to see it. Hopefully a lot will be able to watch it later. It's just stay involved, research the issues, come to the public meetings, voice your opinion. It's all about that. But North Logan's really great because people are out serving in the community, and I think if people continue to do that and try to understand what's going on and just stand up for the freedom that we have in North Logan, it's continue to be a great place.
I'll start with that answer by a Sunday night doorbell ring when 8 people came in my living room and I was informed that it was the Pumpkin Walk planning meeting. And I use that example of the awesome thing that the Pumpkin Walk has been. So my wife and my parents have been involved in a scene with other people since it began on the Butler farm. So I think that's a great example of, we pull out the largest Pumpkin Walk scene, pumpkin event, and it's grown because it's great citizens like you guys. So I think number one, being involved where you can, that's a small example, but there's so many other humbling things we see serving on the council of people who day in and day out, whether that be they're helping at elections with, observing and counting. So again, be involved. I think secondly, it's important. We've talked, and I keep saying, is input. And again, we'll always say in a public hearing that we can't engage you in dialogue, and that if you want to engage in dialogue, that should be done beforehand. So again, there's an issue that we've communicated out. Let's have those conversations. I don't get a lot of those. And so again, if people can help with, a group of us have talked about this and we want to see this, I think that's important. And then we share that. And I think that's an important part of, volunteering in there. And then also use our city resources. They're there. We have some of the greatest things out there, whether that be, again, the rec, the library, the events that we have. So
I'm just going to flip the script just so the audience gets some activity, but who here knew we had a tree committee by raise of hand? Good, me neither. Oh, I see like 2 hands. Didn't know we had a tree committee until, I first got on council. So that's, we have all kinds of committees. So if anybody wants to serve on those, we need help actually. But a couple items that come to mind is we have a committed police department that's expensive for all of us to have, that does a great job of serving the community, and they offer free ride-alongs. And you don't have to get out of the car. So your life generally stays pretty safe and not at risk. But I would recommend for those of you that are interested to see how police operate, to go right along with the city police. That's a great experience. And in the same boat, you can also do the same with city staff, just spend a day with a member of the city staff. Another thought is just when Roger kind of hit on this, there's a lot of times I'll hear frustration from a city council meeting where someone they wanted to speak up. They're really rigid meetings. I think actually the single most important thing anybody can do as a resident of the city is understand the issue that might be troubling them. And that really happens at the best level with time spent with city staff prior to a meeting. And you'd be amazed at how educated you become on something that seems so simple, that is far more complex than you ever understood. And so I would just recommend to anybody that if you're weighing an issue that's really troubling on your mind, run into the city offices. First of all, they want to help. It's not a burden. And it really gives you really good insight into what we're debating on a weekly or biweekly basis in city council.
I would say be like Russell over here. When I was on plan and zoning, there were 2 pews that had names on them. It was Lydia and Russell's pew, and they were at all the meetings. They were there to keep us on target, to voice their opinions as we were working on the general plan. We'd get notations and comments from them, and it helped us see it from their perspectives. When I was at that public hearing meeting recently, it was electric. Maybe some of you were here, but it was just neat to have a row of people all ready to participate and share their opinion on something at a time when it mattered. We, as a council, will serve 2 roles: an administrative role and a legislative role. And that was a legislative situation where input and discretion and weighing of opinions matters. And that's when people need to get involved. Oftentimes we wait until the law's in place. Then we roll into an administrative role where we just have to apply the law. And then we just have to make sure we follow the law. We can't change it. So be involved early on. And then be aware of and be thankful for the staff and for our city officials, employees that help us. You think about how many times you saw a snowplow go by your yard in the last winter. They were there and they took care of you. And we get a lot of that we may not see behind the scenes. I thank them for it. Be aware of that and thank them for what they do.
So with this question of what can residents do, I'm going to echo Kenny here. And the biggest thing is to actually be informed and be involved at all levels. There is a tendency, be at the local level, it's maybe a little bit less exciting and less noticeable. It's not flashy on the news and as dramatic, but it's really important to be involved at the local level as well as all the other levels. And as far as what residents can do to help the city, I'm thinking more broadly than just helping the city council run well or appreciating the staff. One thing that I actually think some category of North Logan could improve is respect for each other. So we do live in a great community, but as I've lived here over the years, I've noticed more signage of people putting up signs. Maybe they have horses or animals or fields. And, you know, when I moved here, there weren't any signs saying no trespassing or please don't do anything to my animals, but those have increased over recent years. And obviously they've increased as respect has decreased. So as the number one thing residents can do is to just always be respectful and then to be informed and to be involved, which in that way, I'm just echoing everybody else.
Thank you. North Logan has strived to be consistent in its application of city code with each applicant. When would a variance be appropriate for a property owner? Brad, can we start with you this time?
Sure. That's an interesting question. And so a variance is, I'm trying to think back. And I was on planning commission or city council for most of the last 12 years or so. And I think we might have done a variance once, but a variance is a very unique situation when it was an unforeseen possibility, really. And I'm almost 100% against the variances because they can lead to lawsuits for special treatment. If there's really a need for a variance, I believe there's probably a need to change the code. And in all reality, the code probably needs a revision rather than a variance. The only reason maybe to give a variance is if there's not time, if there's some sort of real pressure or harm coming to a person in waiting for the time it would take to change the code. And so we know there's a mistake in the code. We know it needs to be changed. So maybe you give a variance with the intent of changing the code to allow whatever that variance is. That's the only instance I can see of giving a variance.
I know in the time since I've been on the council that I don't remember ever having a variance in the code. Is there some mistakes in the code? Yeah, that we learn from and rewrite. But I've always asked that question obviously when it comes to planning zone, one of my questions has always been, have we done this for any other developer or any other thing? Because you can't set a precedence, as Brad alluded to. You've got to equally apply the zoning and the general plan to those guidelines. And the changes are, again, as we've alluded to, is like in the general plan or the zoning. When I first came on, an example of that is we had a large development come in. I'd been on the council 3 months, and it was one of our first large developments in. We're all brand new and green, and that kind of led to what the form-based code that we did down in the city center, where it was more controlled, because all of a sudden that hits you fast. So I think it's important that we have to follow the zoning that we have, but is it perfect? No. Our general plan is 10 years old, over 10 years old. So when it needs to be done, and again, that's one reason it's important I've been through enough, experiences where this would be helpful, and why didn't we do it this way? But I don't believe in variances.
Yeah, that's a good question. And actually, we've had to deal with quite a few variance requests over the last couple of years, probably more than I've seen in my time here. And I think part of that, Roger alluded to the fact that the city general plan is really old. It didn't really account for this type of growth we have today. But I will just say that it would be unwise of us for us not to consider variances, because each individual person that brings a variance, they feel like they have a legitimate reason why. I will say that it's nearly impossible, not completely, but nearly impossible to get those passed, because the law is really strict on variance approval. There has to be some very specific guideline, and I suspect Mark might know these more memorized than I am, but generally, it can't affect the general plan. There's got to be some kind of infringement on your property that you might need to consider a variance. So it's not to be used lightly. But I think every council has the responsibility to listen to those. And the great thing about a council, it's not one person making the decision or a mayor making the decision or a city administrator making the decision, but it's a collective discussion that happens. And we've had some heated discussions in the last year or two on variance, and that's a healthy thing for a city. And so having some of those come in actually keeps the city on task of making sure that our code is up to date. It makes you realize where you may have flaws or gaps that need to be addressed.
I love the idea of variances because the law is good as it applies to variance. That's the state that has given us variance laws, and they are designed to give an ability of people to look at a unique situation and address it with wisdom and address it with prudence. The law says that a variance is allowed if the literal enforcement of the law doesn't make sense, it's unreasonable. If there's unique and special circumstances about that property, if the variance they're seeking is a substantial need to benefit that property, if it will not greatly affect the general plan, and if the spirit of the land use is still employed. It's a beautiful tool to allow wisdom and practicality to fix a unique situation. And so you have to make sure you follow the rules, and you have to make sure you document why you've approved or not approved in a variance. But they're powerful tools to recognize as people, we can fix unique problems with unique solutions.
I really liked Brad Crookston's reply to this answer that it's more of a dangerous thing. A lot of people think their situation is unique, and it is, but the whole reason for having a code is to have the guidelines be clear cut. And if there is a case where maybe it's not good for one person, then I think the idea is to go back and look if it's not good for everybody. It's really important to have clear cut guidelines. And of course, there are times when there are personal complications and individual unique aspects that might consider, everybody's a unique person, but I think that would be a card that would need to be very, very, very carefully played.
So I agree with what's been said, but I'll use an analogy here. I've worked in my job with the special operations forces of the military, and they have a mantra that they follow where they want to be disciplined but not rigid. And what they mean by that is, these guys are putting themselves in harm's way often, and they practice these standard operating procedures that are meant to keep them safe when they get into harm's way. And they practice and drill and practice and drill and practice and drill those standard operating procedures so that they can do it with their eyes closed. And they do that so that they can protect themselves and their squads. But the not rigid part of that is where if no matter how thoroughly they write their standard operating procedures, they recognize that they will find themselves in situations where they need to adapt those procedures to keep themselves safe. So a city council's job is to be disciplined but not rigid in the application of municipal code, because no matter how thoroughly we write the code, it will not cover every exact situation perfectly that we will find ourselves in. We need to be disciplined though, because not everything is a variance. And so the not rigid part though is the fact that a variance clause even exists in the municipal code is recognition that the code cannot be perfect. And so it may not cover, like Buzzy said, it may not cover perfectly every situation. So we need to, there's a very high bar to be able to qualify as a variance, as there should be. But the fact that that clause even exists means that we need to at least consider it.
Thank you. North Logan City's road master plan has been in place since 1975. To install 3100 North, the city worked with several residences and exerting its
exerting its right of way and paying for land necessary to install it as a major arterial road. Do you support that process in our city for master plan roads, or how would you change the road master plan to make North Logan better for all citizens? Roger.
Obviously, the master plan road plan for North Logan has been there a long time, and people make purchase decisions based on those roads. So I do believe in our plan. Is it a perfect plan? Not necessarily. But 3100 North, being part of that process, not heavily involved as far as I do feel that, number one, I was grateful for another east-west thing off the mountain. There was always a concern safety wise of getting people down, and we need more. I've heard a lot of people say they're concerned with the speed and the busyness of that. So you hope, I hope you can get more. I think the process was followed well. We didn't have any eminent domain situations along that road. I felt that we were very fair with the residents along that where we could work with them. I do feel that is not always a perfect scenario when you told part of your front yard is now gone and what you're used to widening of a road. But I do think that the city staff and, we went through appraisals that we did our best to pay a fair market value for what that is, the road. And it's important to maintain that. You can't have you got to have that infrastructure for safety. So I do believe that in the master road policy, could we have other inputs along what they do? But you can't have a policy since 1970 and then change it because there's been decisions made on it with land acquisitions. I think we've done well as a city to work with COG and to get funds to do that.
Yeah, that's a great question too. This is what we talk about when we talk about smart and fair growth. A lot of us have mentioned that we know we're going to grow, so we have to grow smart. This is a tough topic to talk about because anytime we put in a road, we're affecting somebody else's life, and it's generally for the benefit of others that live in specific areas, right? That give people more access. I think the most important thing a city can do is, number one, the road plan has been designed for a while. And even when we reviewed it, very few changes have made because today it still makes a lot of sense the way it's laid out. When we have to go in and actually make these changes, it needs to be completely transparent with every homeowner on that road, and it needs to be fair. And we've had opportunities in this last year to work on this. And we come in as a city council and we propose, a certain payment to acquire that land. And in most cases, it goes really smooth, especially for residents that knew they were building on a master plan road in the future. So tell your friends, if you're buying property in any city, make sure you do your research so you know what the master plan roadmap is, so you know whether you're going to be affected by that or not. When we go in and speak with residents, it's always frustrating. Nobody's going to be happy to lose some of their front yard, but we try to make it very fair from a compensation perspective while still balancing tax dollars that are used for that. We seek grants. Roger alluded to this. We get a lot of grants from the COG because we are so responsible in North Logan in our spending. So we always get a front look for COG funding so it doesn't affect North Logan budget directly. So it's a hard situation, but with growth comes the need to have to do it smart and wise.
3100 North is the road that goes just north of Green Canyon High School. You can think about the two roundabouts that have been placed on that. And when the road master plan was put in, there wasn't a high school there, but it was understood that as things happen, that's where the road would be. If you follow that road, you can see that road doesn't go in a straight line. It respects and tries to mitigate the impact it has upon private property rights. And it recognizes the need to negotiate and find a solution. So I think it's a good example of how you need to have flow that growth requires, and smart growth requires an ability to get to A to B. And when that high school is B, you got to have a way to get there. It's a road that recognizes how to build, I think, effectively. And as Buzzy said, there wasn't a condemnation. So ultimately, there was a consensus and people agreed on how to solve it. So it's a good example of how to handle it. Thanks.
So it's great to hear that 3100, that going through worked so well. And I would just hopefully continue working with the homeowners, making sure that they're aware of what's going to happen and making sure that they're sufficiently compensated, as well as doing everything possible to avoid eminent domain, because eminent domain is not something we want in our community. I think we do also with our roads need to look at how wide they are. So do they need to be as wide as they are? Do we need to take as much frontage as maybe sometimes we do? We're used to really, really large roads in Utah, and that might not always be necessary. And it could be a lot better idea to maybe not have to deal with the water runoff that a wider road would bring. So that's some thoughts I have about roads.
Okay. And since I've been on the planning commission a couple of years ago, since I started there, I've developed a great appreciation for the amount of thought and thorough analysis that's been done that has gone into that transportation master plan for North Logan City. So absolutely, there are people who are much smarter on this topic than I am, who have put a lot of thought into that. And by and large, the transportation master plan has quite effectively served the North Logan City residents so far. In our last planning commission meeting, we just approved a concept plan where a road was going through someone's property, and the city compensated that landowner for that, and the landowner was in favor of that. And by and large, I think that's the city absolutely does try to do that. Absolutely work with the landowners to come up with a just compensation for that. And then it's a win-win. Everyone, the community gets the transportation they need. The landowners are justly compensated. So from what I've observed, by and large, that's been happening. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
So the master plan the master roads plan has been, it's evolved over the years. Many things have changed on it. Often it's been more based on what seems like the right place to go than a traffic study. A new traffic study might be in order for North Logan City roads, although most of our transportation needs are served reasonably well at the moment. Typically, the road development is driven, or the roads are driven by development. A developer wants to come in, and so they put the roads in, which is great, so the city doesn't have to pay for it. One of the things that I've always tried to consider, and that I try to encourage to be considered as we look at the master roads plan and changing it, is we need to seriously consider the impact this has on the property owners. The fact that we put a line on a map can devalue a person's property. And I think it's something that often gets overlooked in the planning commission and the city council is the effect it has on the individual. I don't see any roads in North Logan City that warrant eminent domain. I think we would have to be, we just don't have that kind of need right now in North Logan City. And I believe that that North Logan City could be much more fair with the residents. If they really need the property, they need to pay for it, if it's their city need for it.
Thank you. North Logan City has made significant efforts to increase the amount of communication and transparency with its residents the past few years. What specific ideas do you have for increasing communication and transparency between the city and its residents? And how do you plan on using your position as a council member toward this goal?
I think I'm first, right?
Mhm.
You always get like an extra heartbeat in when you're first. You don't have time to think about it. But special call out to Mayor Peterson, who's here tonight, Emily, who's on our council, who have really been active on Instagram. I used Facebook and then was told by my kids that nobody uses Facebook unless you're over the age of 40. So my mistake on that. But in all seriousness, with COVID came a need to get more virtual on our meetings. And we were one of the first cities to implement virtual meetings. And you can see in this room how we've done that. I've noticed that actually there are weeks that we'll have 30 or 40 viewers, which is really nice. And I think we could do a better job of marketing that even moving forward. What's interesting is many municipalities have pulled that out now because COVID is over and they don't want to broadcast their meetings virtually. We've not done that. We've decided not to do that on purpose because we want residents to have insight into everything we're dealing with. The other thing I would just say is anytime we can recommend, tax was a great example. People really want to know how the budget worked and why taxes were going up. And I probably talked to 10 residents who decided to go into the city office and learn about the budget. And they came back and all of them, this is not a lie, 10 of 10 said, you guys are far more responsible than I ever realized with our tax dollars. I don't love the county or the school district, but North Logan is actually really quite responsible. So another way that we're transparent, and I mentioned this earlier, when you have questions, we'll open up the books. We'll open up our meetings, certainly cell phones, email, apparently Instagram and not Facebook are great options too. So if I am reelected, commit to that. And we want to get as much transparency out there as we can.
Well, my QR code goes to a Facebook page. So
Smart.
that's a problem. Yeah, I'm over 40. Better change that quickly. The city has a duty to follow the Open Meetings Act. That's a law that requires the business of the government to be open to people so they know what is happening, what is discussed. It's to avoid those infamous kind of smoke-filled rooms where decisions are made and then once it's made, you come out and pretend in front of the public to make a decision. The Open Meetings Act protects against that. The city follows those rules and makes sure that citizens have an ability to see that. As a citizen, it's sometimes difficult to be able to prepare for meetings because we get noticed of those meetings just before. So you have a developer in the city working on a plan for months or years, like for instance, the one that I went to recently, that the developer said he's been in the plan for a year, and we find out about it, 3 days before, and have to develop a response in 3 days that responds to a year's worth of product. So there's that balance to make sure that you can find out. I think an aggressive person can learn enough time to form a proper response and to get it submitted on time. Thanks.
So I believe that the city should, any city meeting with maybe very, very few exceptions, should be accessible to any citizen of North Logan. That's part of We the People government, is having access to any meeting that is deciding how we're being governed. As far as being aware of that, we each have the opportunity to come to city council meetings, so people can do that. That's already available. To the point that Hansi made, a lot of times it does feel that residents get notified really short term. So I think that's an area that the city could improve, that if they're aware of a major change, a development that's being in the works, in the plans, that the residents in that surrounding area should be notified as soon as the city's aware that that's change is being made, so that the citizens can have a response and have an input.
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this too, because, on the planning commission, the city council meetings with so few people here, I've wondered, how do we get more people here? I think I, like most people, when I have a question about anything about North Logan City, I'll just go to Google and type my question in. And I will say the city's website, I've been a little confused on getting to the right information on the city's website. I think for municipalities of our size, the city does a pretty good job with the website. I know staffing limitations prevent that from being, quite as user-friendly as something like Amazon or something. But I think, we can update the website. All the meetings are accessible to the public. And I've had friends that are like, I didn't know you were talking about that. And I will say, well, they did notify the agenda. I think more advanced notice, we could definitely look into it. The challenge there is the agenda is not always set. As soon as the agenda is set, we do send out the advance notice. But sometimes you don't know exactly what's going to be on the agenda, because you need to be able to check certain boxes before you can have a public hearing on some given matter. So there's that. We have used the phone system in the past, and I know there's a balance there on how often you bug people with a phone call, notifying them of some issue that you think is important, but they may not. But the city does have that phone system available. Ultimately, I think a lot of it's going to come down to just in person. The great thing about a municipality of our size is we can still go hit the road and actually talk to people quite a bit and make sure people are aware of some of these important issues coming down the road.
Well, I'm glad this question was asked, because I feel like this is actually a major concern. Open government is essential to freedom, to protecting our life, liberty, and property. If we don't know what the government's doing, then we don't know if they're protecting our freedoms. This is actually one of the biggest concerns I have with North Logan. It seems that many decisions have been made before the meeting starts. I come into a meeting and everybody votes the same, and there's no discussion on a topic. And like I said, I've attended every meeting. We have significantly more closed sessions than any other city in Cache County, by a large portion. And I think we need to stop doing that. The citizens don't know why the council's moving into a closed session. They just know that they're having a closed session. And I think the citizens of North Logan deserve to know why we're going into a closed session, what's being discussed. There might be some small particulars that don't need to be revealed to the citizens, but it's important that we as citizens know what's happening in those meetings.
Communication is very important. I know through my years on the council, what's the best way? I know it's old school, but I love our newsletter. If you look at our newsletter, it's very cutely done, but there's always a section. There is something about, I think we just scroll through things on the phone now. There's something about hard print. So I do appreciate our newsletter and what work goes into there. And so again, encouraging citizens to read that. Secondly, on communication, I think, and I'll, comment a little bit to, you come to a meeting and decision is made a lot, again, and Brad knows this with city council, the discussions are done before. I mean, you can't you have agenda for multiple items in there. You're going to ask yourself, the work's done prior to that, some of it, you have some discussion and there can be debate, but I do believe that a lot of that's done prior to. So again, communicating to that. If I don't hear a lot of communication, also in communication is that partly, I think a lot of people may not even been here tonight if we didn't do that, the phone call out. I think that's important to notify people. I believe in North Logan do way more noticing. I have properties in Logan and I had a sign kind of by one of my properties that, hey, by the way, this is coming. As far as closed sessions, they're noticed for property acquisition and for the competence and character of individuals. So I appreciate the fact that a lot of that can affect people's value and so forth. So.
Thank you. When should a city council member rescue himself or herself from discussions or votes? Mark, will have you begin.
Okay. Recusal is an important thing. It identifies a public interest that is in conflict with the person's personal interest. As an attorney, we have to be careful about not to have conflicts of interest, and the same kind of rules apply. If you have an interest in the property, if you have knowledge of the people and your relationships that can sway what you're doing, you just disclose that and recuse. It's a pretty simple and straightforward thing to do. It's part of that open meetings. It's part of the idea of a sunshine laws. You just be open, transparent, disclose the conflict, and step aside if it creates if you cannot exercise independent discretion on behalf of the city.
So this is very similar to conflicts of interest that are common in my field of study, which is physics. If you have an interest that is monetary, that conflicts with being able to make a fair judgment, or if you have a interest that is a connection with a relationship that also affects your ability to be a unbiased judge, then those are times where you need to excuse yourself.
Yeah, this has been one of my big frustrations with the state legislature is that they're passing laws that pretty overtly benefit them and their cronies. And I have no idea how they're not recusing themselves, or how no one's forcing them to recuse themselves. But absolutely, I mean, Mark said it well. Like, if you have any personal financial interest, or your family does, or even your friends, you should consider recusing yourself. And we do need to absolutely be transparent about that too. Yeah, I probably won't take all my time, but
There's not too much.
yeah, right. That's all.
Yeah, there's probably not a lot to add. Mark gave a great start to this. Basically, if it benefits you personally, financially, more than the rest of the citizens, I mean, every decision benefits you as a citizen of North Logan, but if it directly benefits you to do something, you probably need to recuse yourself from that decision. And I would agree with a lot of what's been said. The state, all the politics would be better if everybody followed that and just didn't do what pads their pocket. Unfortunately, we have people down in Salt Lake, trying to get higher density housing in every city because they're a developer. So they hire people to go down and petition everybody to change the laws for that. So.
To answer this question, I'll first say on my time on the council, if there has been a place where I could benefit financially for it, I've reclused myself. I had an example of 15 acres next to my house. I live next to an empty alfalfa field and I'm landlocked. So from the very beginning, there was a developer who was looking at buying other land, and I reclused myself from every decision from that. And I think that's important to do. So again, my commitment is that I I'm not running for any, trust me, I'm not running for any ulterior motive, but to serve the citizens. I don't have an axe to grind. I think that's important that you have somebody that has an open mind to that and isn't trying to prove something. Because I will say, from working on the city council and the councils I've worked with, that there's never been this, and you hear stories of it, and, you know, even locally, but there's no trying to financial benefit or gain from this. We're just trying to, you know, better the community.
Benefit of going last, I just thought of a cool rhyme, and it's probably terrible, but I'm gonna share it anyway. If in doubt, just step out. So thanks. I actually did not pre-think that. Hey,
Mike.
I like going fifth. I thought you were gonna fist bump me. But the truth is, you know, sometimes it's hard to know when you should. And the real answer is, if there's even a hint, step out. And really what that comes from is then you need to trust your colleagues on the council. You don't have to have all 5 of you there to make a good decision. And most importantly is that if there's anything in your mind that thinks I might have a special interest here, I can give you actually a quick example. I mentioned I work for healthcare, a large healthcare organization, and they have some land in North Logan. And there was a discussion that came up 3 years ago about that land, what was going to happen with it. I had no financial benefit. I'm an IT guy, so I do computers, you know, but it just felt like I work for this company, I should probably step out. So I would just, you know, unfortunately, I think that does happen very well at the local level. I think we've addressed where there are some problems with that at a higher level, but it's a good question. And certainly I think everybody here gave the right answers.
Thank you. North Logan has managed to keep its tax rate below average in Cache County. What are your thoughts on how to balance the need for tax revenue for maintaining and improving city services with the interest of keeping our tax rate low?
Is it my turn to start? Well, first off, we have to consider what taxes are for. And really, taxation of people is to allow a government entity to provide protection. So that is our goal as a city, to provide protection for people, whether that be police force or relative safety for roads, our roads. And then the things that we are not as a city is a provider. That should be left to the private sector. So anything that is the city acting as a provider, that should be looked at as maybe a way that we could reduce taxes. So one of the reasons I'm actually running was concern over the North Logan City survey sent out earlier this year, where they asked, what are your thoughts about a recreational center with a swimming pool and a pickleball court, and how much increase in property tax would you be willing to pay for that? And that's not the role of government. That should be left to the private sector. And that's definitely a way we can keep our taxes down, is if we're not providing an entertainment and being the person that people run to for entertainment. That's really should be the private sector, and it does keep our taxes down and allow people the opportunity to choose where they spend their money.
Okay, so I guess I'll start this question out by saying I am a tightwad by nature. Like I do not like to spend money. My wife and I have always just been pretty financially conservative. So I would probably bring that, you know, that approach to the city council also. But I also recognize that everything's a balance. And so I do think, you know, I remember a city council meeting several years ago that I just attended, I was interested about the police force. So the North Park Police Force is, you know, a good chunk of the city's budget. And so there was a discussion on should we just dissolve the police force and then contract that out to the county sheriff, because that would save the city money. That would reduce the tax burden on the city. But overwhelmingly, the citizens came into that public hearing and said, no, we're willing to pay that because we like having that police force here more locally. Same thing with the fire department. So I think it comes to public input. If the majority of our citizens, based on public input, are willing to spend money on things like that, then I would support that as well. Even though I'm a tightwad by nature, I think, you know, I think the public input is very important there.
This is a great question, and it's also a really hard one to know the solution for. Really, there's so many things that happen in North Logan City. I believe in our essential things for sure need to be funded. The police department, the fire, EMS. We need to provide roads. When I was growing up in North Logan in the 90s, it was not uncommon for many roads to be ice covered throughout the winter. Essentially, in fact, I had a sleigh that I pulled with my horse, and I would pull it along on the roads frequently through Johnson subdivision and around where I lived. Nowadays, the roads department does an awesome job of keeping the roads clear. And I think that's probably the right thing to do, to keep those roads clear. But to save money, one of the things that we do is try to charge for each utility that's provided and charge equally, like water. When I was on the city council before, we changed the water to a tiered rate, which helped bring the water into the positive, that it wasn't being subsidized. And I think basically one of the things we can do is try to make people pay for what they use in North Logan City and not make it a global burden on other things. And when businesses come in, don't take tax dollars from the citizens to pay for it, but to make sure that everybody's treated fairly.
I feel property taxes, it's hard. And I think like Leslie's alluded to, it's important to understand that of your total tax bill, we get a very limited amount. And we try to do our best with that amount. I think we've seen through what we call wage inflation. We all talk about our wonderful staff and we have to pay. We've seen a real, and this has happened even in businesses, that the pressures that come, if you look at any budget, the bulk of the budget is wages, benefits, insurance, and all that. And so at some point you feel like you're cutting here to do that. I mean, we saw starting wages in police go from, I think, $15, $16 an hour up to $21 an hour just to keep an officer and so forth. So obviously I do believe that you might have, need for tax increase there. For many years, we did not have a tax increase, which is good. And I think we try to balance as a council through grants. I mean, 12 years ago, I never heard any department say, I'm going for this grant to help with this. Anytime we can get a grant to help with alleviating what we take out of the general plan, that's less dollars that we have to use on, that we can use elsewhere. So I do feel that there may be need for it, but I do also feel that it's important to explain the why behind it. So if there is a tax increase, why are we doing it? People have alluded to that they know that they want to play for their police and fire. There's some of the reasons that we've had some of the increases, but I think we've managed it very well here as far as the needs of our community.
Yeah, just to add on to what everybody said, one way to offset tax increases is to encourage business. And over the last 6 years, we've offered incentives to businesses to come to North Logan. A couple of the more recent ones are IFA, Cal Ranch. So giving them a benefit early on will probably pay dividends for, potentially generations from a financial perspective. Doesn't cover everything. So, thinking that we don't have to collect taxes is probably unrealistic. But when it comes to taxes, it's really just a game of give and take and balance. And, one of the single most important areas that any resident can contribute is to their thoughts on where we should spend your money. We know, 6 years ago, we knew residents really value the police department, no matter the cost. There's probably a limit on that. But in general, the value, everybody felt like it's worth it. At the same time, we have many, especially, families that want the recreational programs that are here. And so what we try to balance every year when we talk about taxes is where should we spend that money this year? And almost exclusively, it's around the voice of the residents that live here, myself, you, our families. And so it's a tough act. I will say that Roger hit on this. We had some interesting things in the last 3 years where salaries, probably for all of you too, inflation just sent salaries through the roof and we couldn't hire. I think we were like 20 FTEs short in the city. The police department was almost gone. So, the only option there is, do we kill recreational programs and put money there? And we talked to people and people said, I don't want to lose my recreational programs. If I need to pay $20 more a year to give people honest salaries, then I'm willing to do that. And we by and large heard that consensus from almost every resident.
Nothing's free. And as a city, we have to balance what we would like to have versus what we have in resources to provide. And we do that in part with taxes versus fees. And we talked about getting public, the recreation and things where you pay a fee to enjoy an amenity. That's a one way to handle that allocation. So people are paying for what they want. I think the city does a good job in recognizing the sacredness of the money that comes in from the citizens and spending it wisely and not trying to add more decorations to the tree every year and get better and better and better. There may be a time when you go through and sort things out and balance where you are, but I think we do a good job, and a lot of people from the state and federal could look at something like North Logan and do a better job of their taxing.
Along with what you guys are saying, what are your thoughts about a rec center in North Logan?
Do I start?
You start.
Okay. That's a good question. My personal thought, yeah, I would actually seek public input. My initial thought is, from what I've heard from the public, I don't know if there's enough public support to expend a lot of tax dollars towards that effort, but I would need to get more input on that. Certainly the North Logan Rec program is probably the best in the valley. I think it's the most heavily used. I'm sure there's statistics on that somewhere. And my children have benefited from the North Logan Rec program greatly. But as far as actual construction of a rec center, that's definitely upping the game. And I would think we would just have to make sure there really is overwhelming public support before we make a commitment like that.
So I'm not sure what the question, they're exactly thinking of for a rec center, but the North Logan City has a responsibility to provide fire services, police services, roads, water, sewer. Those should be our top priorities. And these other things start to infringe on people's individual rights to choose where they spend their money. And that's what concerns me about it. The city did do a study, well, I shouldn't call it a study, but they had a survey. The citizens of North Logan appear to want trails, which I love the idea of more trails. I guess for me, I envision maybe more sidewalks along a lot of our roads that don't have anywhere to ride or to walk. I think those should be much higher priority than a rec center. I believe if we left the rec center to the private industry, they would come in and do it themselves. And I think it's the wrong place to venture with city money.
I know it's alluded to the question. I think a lot of it, we've had requests for, again, it comes back to listening to the citizens. We've had citizens say, hey, can we get a pool here like Logan, or can we get, so again, citizen input. I believe in the voice of the people. There is some amazing things that can be done with the private sector and donations, but also, if there was overwhelming support and donations and a way to pay for it that didn't affect taxpayer dollars, I think it's important. I feel on the council, we focused on it is important, as alluded to have safety in roads, but I also feel it's an important part of us to provide parks and places for people to go, safe places to go and play. And I think we've done an awesome job with that. Also library, we put our emphasis in there. We've had a lot of private money that's also come in that helped with that too, that we're able to provide a great library and resources. So again, but we've also been able to, we're probably the highest, North Logan uses that RAPS opportunity, and it's that restaurant tax where we commit to finishing a project, we get money, and that's money that people voted for and said they were willing to pay extra money in their RAPS to pay. So again, recreation is a part, I truly believe, part of what we need to do in our community. I don't know, everyone says we're going to go to the park. I mean, I live along 1200 East. I can't tell people to go play in the middle of the busy road there. So I need a park to go to. So.
Yeah, it's, city versus community. I've thought a lot about this definition, and what I've learned in my long years in life, it feels like some days, is that community is gathering. And that is when your city becomes a community. There's other ways to do it, and a rec center may not be the right way. What did surprise me, though, is that when we sent out the survey, 90% of respondents favored a rec center. I don't think I've ever seen that type of data point on a survey that we've sent North Logan. Here's the shocking part: 85% favored a tax increase to do it. So we talk about listening to residents. Do we just ignore that data? Do we actually do what we say we're going to say and do our due diligence to find out if that number, first of all, is it valid? Was there enough data that was provided, enough people take the survey? I think 1,500 people took that survey. Second thing is we have a unique situation here with the ice arena where I think our condensers can actually heat the water. So if you could actually do it very responsible, not have to pay to heat the pools because of what we have with the ice center. So, I personally would love to see a rec center. I would have liked it 10 years ago. My kids were younger. We used to go to St. George, and if you've ever used Washington City's rec center, that is such a great thing. And it was always awkward to me that I had to go to St. George for an indoor pool, and we couldn't do the same thing in Cache Valley. So I do support it. I think, though, I would want to make sure that we did the adequate due diligence and truly understand that we actually have that same support today. And then North Logan is Roger alluded to this, but we're very savvy in the way we are able to do some of these things between RAPS taxes, donations, and relationships that are in the community here in North Logan.
I don't know if any of you have a boat or have family with a boat, but the definition of a boat is a hole in the water in which you can pour money. And if you build something like a rec center, you are making a big hole in the water in which you and every other citizen forever will pour money. You can't sell this boat. It's yours forever. And so when you look at a poll, you want to make sure that the citizens are speaking at this time and place, but they're committing generations of citizens to continue to throw money at the boat. I love boats. It'd be fun to have a boat and throw money in it, enjoy it, ski all the time, but they're expensive. And we have to make an informed decision that recognizes we're committing not just us, but future generations to paying for this hole in the water, which may be fun, but it's still an expensive thing to have.
So going back to the proper role of government, and we really need to understand that it's not the government's job to provide recreation and entertainment. So it really should be left to the private sector. And then that's the person who can have the boat to pour their money into, and hopefully they can make a profit. We are blessed to live in a very, very prosperous area. And quite frankly, we're not lacking in entertainment and amusement opportunities. Lots of people have yards. And what was interesting to me, why I've been campaigning, is I had the opportunity to speak with a very young mother who lives in what would be considered a lower income area. And I told her my views that I've already expressed about the recreational center. And she agreed with it. She doesn't have that much money. And she was like, why should I be funding this when I could use my money somewhere else? That's taking away my decision, my liberty to decide where my money goes, because that's not, even though there might be public support for it, it's public support of people encouraging government to overstep their bounds. And so my opinion on the recreational center is no, it's not the government's role. And we need to stay within the proper bounds of government.
Thank you. What types of projects should be funded through bonding? Do you foresee a need to bond for any projects in the next 4 years? And how do you feel about the school bond?
Guess it's my turn to start. What types of projects should be bonded? And in North Logan City, we have a responsibility to provide water, as I kind of mentioned before, other necessities. So there's probably some water projects that are going to have to be bonded. We don't have nearly enough storage capacity in North Logan City. We need to store more water. Those reservoirs for water, reservoir tanks might need some bonding. That's probably there. There could be a few other ones, but it would have to be some essential things. The school bond, I'm against the school bond. I think it's too much. And I actually could spend way more time on the school bond reasons against it. I agree there's likely some needs. I don't like that the students are out in portable classrooms, but one of the big things I'm opposed to is the way they're going to spend this money. I assume they'll do it the same way they spent the money with the last bond. They'll give all the money to one contractor. They'll be overcharged for it, likely, rather than bidding it out in the free market and getting competitive bids on each individual project. But I want to see a change in how we're going to spend the money before we go ahead and bond for that much money for the school.
I'll first say that on the time on the city council, we've never had a lot of reasons to bond. And I think that's good credit to, good management and planning. I do feel that you spend what's in your budget. again, we do have the opportunity with some better rate financing for needs. And as Brad alluded to, and knowing the needs, we are in need of transportation lines to get water lines across the East Bench if there was ever, for safety, for fire, more storage. And that requires a lot of money to build those tanks, where if we can with development, if that's able to happen, that's great. Or if we can also secure grants and stuff, that's helpful too. But again, probably shouldn't bond too often. School bond, that's a tough thing. I mean, you know, I have less young kids in school, and there's an important need for looking at the growth. My kids benefit from going to Green Canyon High School. But I do feel it is hard, like, again, input. Could there be some economies of scale through combined school districts? I mean, you could go on. And again, that's where most of your tax dollars go, is to the schools. So again, that's important to put input. That is a lot of money, and things go up. So I do, I'm in support of school funding, but maybe not to that tune of money. And I, honest truth, haven't looked a ton into it. And I know they just came out and says 139 million. So again, some more research on it.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add. I mean, obviously bonding does have to happen on occasion. Cities don't have millions and millions of dollars available. So there are circumstances where it needs to be considered. I think, not all bonds are paid by taxpayer dollars. That's important to know. Endowments can pay for those. North Logan's actually used that very wisely, especially over the last few years. And I think, we kind of ran into a situation 3-4 years ago where rates dropped incredibly low, where you could actually bond a project and spend less than trying to save for it over 5 years and not having to bond. So having that in the toolkit for the city is really important. And then responsible use of it, is the second most important factor there. But as far as the Cache County school bond, this is something that tugs at emotions, because I hate that my junior high kids have to go to Providence, and I hate that the city council can't actually have more decision or any decision in how a district runs their finances. For this one in particular, I totally, I think Brad hit it right on the head. That has to be financed correctly, and the process needs to be fair and transparent. For this one specifically, we're in a tough situation, and so I have to put some faith in those leaders that we actually need it now. We don't want kids I grew up in Salt Lake, where we were always in trailers for school, and they didn't heat well, and it's just not a good situation for kids to learn. So in general, I'd say, I'm supportive of it, just because we're at a fairly desperate point, but hopefully in the future, there's a little bit more responsibility around how the districts are using those funds.
I wonder what Dave Ramsey would say about bonds. We're deciding how to spend the future residents' money. And so we need to be thoughtful about that and be very restrained. As Jenny has said, government is a narrow responsibility, and especially when we can't pay our way, we're asking for future generations to pay for something we want to use now. We need to have some incredible discernment and discretion on that. The school board, that's a beautiful building we have down there, and it seems to be quiet 3 months out of the year. If it were a public business, you wouldn't leave it quiet for that long. You'd find a way to use it all the time. So my mom was the first person that went to the first class in Skyview. I was the first class at Mountain Crest, and my kids were the first class at Green Canyon. We've seen schools grow. They're nicer and nicer, and they cost a lot of money. Their yachts are not both in the water.
I like that.
So we just be prudent with somebody else's money.
So at the beginning of this, I said I didn't know everything and that I was willing to ask questions. And this is an area where I personally need to ask more questions. It's future money, so we need to use it carefully and within the bounds of the proper role of government. And that's evidently something that I can learn more about.
Yeah, as far as what the city might bond for in the future, I think Brad covered it well. Everyone talked about possibly water infrastructure, but otherwise I don't see a lot. As far as the school bond that is currently up, it frustrates me, honestly. It frustrates me because this bond would probably not be necessary if the school board had been smarter about the first bond that they issued. You remember the first bond from a few years ago, the last big bond originally was supposed to be for one high school. And then they ended up building 2 high schools, one in Nibley and one here in North Logan. And the purpose for which was so that they didn't have to bus kids across the big donut hole that's the Logan City School District in the middle of our school district. And I feel like they were a little dishonest in saying they were still going to bus kids across the school, across Logan, but just for middle school instead of high school. And so now they're stuck with, I'm not unaware of the need for more school buildings. I have kids in school too, and I've seen the overcrowding that's happening there. But I feel like the school board, I honestly, someone mentioned that we need to do serious consideration about looking at how to combine the Cache County and the Logan City school districts, because we are not leveraging economies of scale. I think we're the only school district in the state, probably in the country, that has a big donut hole in the middle of the district. And that causes problems like this, where they don't want to bus kids back and forth through the middle of that donut hole.
Thank you. What is your vision for North Logan development, including business versus residential versus city government versus open, undeveloped lands? And how can North Logan balance the need to preserve green space for our rural feel with the need of housing in our city?
Can you read that again, just because there's a lot of stuff there, and I know I don't want to answer it one time through.
What is your vision for North Logan development, including business versus residential versus city government versus open, undeveloped lands? And how can North Logan balance the need to preserve green space and our rural feel for the need for housing in our city? Roger.
Oh, exciting. Wow, that's a lot. First of all, starting with businesses, I think the more I commit to continue to attract new businesses to North Logan. Are we business friendly place? And I would dare say, I'm on the Economic Development Committee and have opportunities to visit current businesses and appreciate them and see what their needs are. And also working with how do we attract other businesses here, whether that through incentives. So anytime you can get a business here, they're paying taxpayer dollars, that's going to help alleviate some of the other areas, because you don't have pressure on your budget because you're getting sales tax dollars. You also talk about that rural feel and how you do it. We've alluded to some of the growth issue. I think that again is vetted in the importance of good zoning. What areas do we need to look at in the zoning and in the general plan that can help us maintain those rural feels? I put on my flyer, I think it's important to work closely, that you're not reactive, making decisions, that we're following the code. And anything more now, it's going to be harder. You have to make sure you have good code and zoning, because a lot of our hands are tied on some of that. I'm trying to remember all the other questions. Holy cow. 15 seconds. And I think in all actuality, it comes down to, are we well versed? So,
Well done.
Fastest 15 seconds ever.
I know.
We should cut it down to 2 minutes. We're approaching city council attendance limits here tonight. So thanks for staying with us this long. It's been a long night. I think we've covered a lot of this actually throughout the other questions that were asked earlier. A couple things to note. Zoning, Roger hit on this. We have zoning that does allow us to keep adequate green space, and we're very, very stingy about ever changing that zoning. It's happened once, and I mentioned that earlier. It was with neighbors that actually worked with the developer to find a fair compromise. 99 out of 100 people in favor on that. So zoning is important. I also mentioned, or I want to mention that Alan will remind us of this in council, and it's really actually an important fact, but we have the most park/green space per capita in the state. And that is a rural feel. I think if you go to Elk Ridge or if you go to Mountain View, any of these parks that we're so grateful to have here, it keeps the area open. And so it's a nice way to achieve that. It does come with costs, because we have to maintain those parks, but it's probably better than high density housing, I would say. And then just another thing I mentioned earlier is that we want to look to incentivize business when we can, especially good businesses that are going to bring jobs and financial benefits to the city. And so that's something the city should always keep available as well. I try to write down all the questions there. I will just say we saw a lot of success with the live work units on Wolfpack Way. And so, anytime we can accommodate home and business in the same locations, that seems to be a real need. And a lot of people benefit from that, being able to have their business right in their downstairs and So we want to keep policies that are working well. We want to reevaluate where we can continue to balance well.
The business residential balance is key. Alan talked about it before, where we using city monies, your monies, as a catalyst to generate business revenue. Business revenue funds a budget, and if you can use some money to light the fire and create a roaring tax revenue stream, that's a good use of economic money because it pays dividends. For the open space, I can point to my backyard. When we built it in an alfalfa field, and we had an alfalfa field right to the west of us, and we grew up with our kids with the 2 ditches, and we had beautiful views of the west. I knew at some point in time that alfalfa field would grow houses, and it did. But we were able to work with the developer, to work with the neighbors, to create a consistent development. And I lost a lot of the view, but it was what worked. As far as bonding goes, we're talking bonding is basically spending your money when you grow up and you're paying taxes. And so we'll do our best to not spend your money before you even earn it. And that's what we need to be watching out for. And I'm glad you're here thinking about that now, because you'll be paying for the schools that we build.
If only you could vote now too. That was a loaded question, and since I have 2 minutes or 1.5, whatever it was, I'm going to jump to the open space aspect. We need to look at our zoning. So again, our master plan right now says we value our open space in rural feel. We have about 4,000. We have over approximately 4,000 acres in North Logan. And in our 2013 master plan, they had the different percentages of what the land use was. And in 2013, we had approximately 1,300 acres of open land. So whether that included parks or fields. Our current master plan, if everything went according to plan right now, tonight, we would wake up and we would have only about 175 acres of open space. And so that's including parks, that's including something that I'm not quite sure what it means, industrial uses and agriculture. So that's about 8 times less than what we currently enjoy. So personally, I think that's the place we need to start and say, if we want a rural feel, we have to have more than 4%, because you're not going to have a rural feel if you have 4%, or we need to be more honest and say we're going to be a suburban area. We've got to make that decision here of, do we have the rural feel and we up what we have to make that rural, or we change our story?
Okay, so interesting points, Jenny. Thank you. A couple of thoughts on that, just really quickly. As you mentioned, most of the open fields that we have right now are actually zoned into some residential density, not agricultural. The challenge that we would have in trying to downzone that to where, so right now, if the landowner on those fields wanted to develop within the current zoning, that's an administrative action for the city council. So all they can really do is make sure it follows code. Yep. But actually rezoning that, we would just have to be very sensitive to not infringe upon the property rights of that landowner.
Exactly.
Let's see. I like the idea of definitely encouraging businesses in the right zoned areas. I rezoning to introduce businesses in areas where it was not previously zoned for is a little tricky. And I feel like that's, when people move to North Logan, when they build a house here, they look at how that surrounding area is zoned because they expect to know how that area is going to grow up. So if we kind of pull that rug out from underneath them and rezone, that's tricky, and I'm generally not in favor of that. Otherwise, I think businesses in the zoned areas for businesses is great, and we should continue to encourage that. Again, that's a source of tax revenue.
All right. Well, having grown up in North Logan, my vision of North Logan is what it was when I was a kid. That's long past. We have 3 times the residents now. But having said that, the general plan, actually, if you read it, is really a vision of North Logan. The general plan has no real legal binding to it. Code is based on the general plan, and so a lot of what the general plan says is my vision of North Logan: open space, preserving the rural nature. Obviously, a lot of that's trickling away as the businesses come in. We hope that they'll at least cover their costs. And that's what I expect businesses to do. And I think it's just important that we make sure we're not selling out what North Logan is for any special interest initiatives. I'm talking about high density housing. We can't sell out North Logan for that kind of stuff. So I guess that's my vision. And that's one of the things I'm really concerned about is our general plan, and that we maintain it. I think there's some code changes that need to be made, especially in like the RE1 zone, to help preserve some of the open space so we don't end up with just 3/4 acre lots and no real open space left. But that's some of my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Surprise, that was your last question. So now we're gonna now we're gonna wrap up. You each get 2 minutes to give a concluding speech about what you would like to say.
We're that.
Leslie?
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks. First of all, thank you for moderating tonight for the four of you, and really appreciate you being here. And I know it's fascinating. So you probably had an awesome night. Make sure you post on your Instagram or TikTok or whatever the youth use today. But, I just want to, I'll try not to take the full 2 minutes here. It's been a long night, but I think what you see up here tonight is why North Logan is special. You've got a great group of candidates to select from. People that really care about the city, people that care about you, people that care about how we spend the money and our money. I would just say to you that one thing I'm really proud about the last 4 years is that this city council, this mayor, and the city staff, we have required people to follow the rules. And as we've grown, that might be, the single most important thing that has to happen. Nobody gets an exception. Rules need to be followed because it's for the benefit of everybody that lives here. And it's a lot harder to do that when you're a smaller community and your resources are slimmer. And it's easier to kind of make some exceptions here and there because of who you know and what you know. But this city council has chosen not to do that. And that has led to some really hard battles. Certainly the last 2 years. But it's important that we do it. And it's going to set the city on a course for the long term, for the size that we're going to be in the next 20 years. So I would just ask for your vote to help us stay on that path. This is a good group that we've got going. I've been very fortunate to be on the council. I never thought I'd see myself as a city council member. And it's really an honor and a privilege. And it's not something I take for granted. And I would just, again, welcome you. I've got a flyer. My cell phone's on there, a little website I have. I guess don't go to my Facebook page. But, I would be more than happy to meet with you anytime. Ballots go out, I think, in the mail October 15th, and you've got some tough choices, but it was really an honor to be here tonight and appreciate your patience staying this long. And I took almost all 2 minutes. Sorry.
Well done. I kind of want to stand up, but I'm sure you all do as well, and stretch a little bit. And I drank this whole bottle of water, so that's again, it's so great to be here. I'd invite you to call me, talk to me, email me, message me, whatever, to talk about your vision so that we can work together to carry out what we want to see happen in the state. I'm a recent empty nester. I have the time to dedicate to this job. I have experience I think I can bring to the table that allows me to see the issues from that critical eye from the law, and to see the pressures and leverages that others have that try to push and pull, help look forward to protect the city against litigation that'll happen, and be an effective way to carry out your voice. Glad you're here. Appreciate you being here. Ready to go home and see if Jordan Love did well in the game. So
Again, thank you for being here. I just am going to reiterate that my desire is to help keep North Logan nice and enjoyable. And I think that's distinctly tied to how our community is physically, as well as the people we attract. So we really have some tough decisions to make as we look at this growth that's pressing down on us. And I would just also like to say that I am a firm conservative, and I deeply respect private property. So it was mentioned about, maybe looking at more agricultural zoning and how that might affect private property owners. I'm not putting out any promises of what I can do, except for that I am going to make this something that I try, that we can at least have the effort of trying to preserve and working with private property owners and see how far we get. If that's just a focus of trying and being creative in solutions. And I can promise that I can be creative and that I will try, but that's the only promise I'm putting out there is the effort. I'm not promising that what my ideas will work. If you have questions, please feel free to email me. I have a flyer back there and I'm happy to answer questions. I've been happy to get to know people with this campaign. It's been very interesting to hear people's stories and their views on how North Logan's doing. And again, thank you for your time. It's been a long evening.
It has been. Thank you. I would like to also tell everyone, thank you. Thanks for coming out and educating yourself. I feel like I try as a voter, I really try to educate myself on the issues and the candidates. So it's so nice to see other people who feel the same and who really put in the time, because it does take time to inform yourself on the issues and on the candidates. Ultimately, you know, what I want to see in an elected position is just someone who will really come into that position and make the decisions that they think are best for their constituents and, you know, free of conflict of interest or even a perception of conflict of interest. You know, where I work at the Space Dynamics Lab, we have to sometimes recuse ourselves. I appreciate that question. Recuse ourselves from certain decisions or proposing on certain things because of the position that we're in. And we've made that decision, not just to do it when we're mandated to, but even if there's a perception of a conflict of interest, we're going to remove ourselves from that. So that's why, you know, I'm coming to this free of conflict of interest. I have no ulterior motives. I really do just want to see what's best for North Logan City. Someone made a comment earlier that they come to the city council meetings and they feel like there's no discussion. Everyone votes the same way. I can assure you that you know, I will be an independent voice on the city council. I think whoever made that comment did not come to the last planning commission meeting, because we had over 2 hours worth of discussion on the topic. And it was all very respectful discussion, but we did not agree on everything. And ultimately the vote was not unanimous. I voted contrary to the rest of the commission, but it was all very respectful. And I think that's the beauty of this, is we can disagree and sometimes disagree passionately, but as long as it's done professionally and respectfully, that's how things should run. And so, you know, I can work across those differences and I'm good at doing that. And yeah, again, I, like everyone else said, I love communicating with people. I love hearing what people's concerns are, what their desires are for the community. So please feel free to reach out. Like everyone else said, I've got a QR code on my flyer where you can get a hold of me. Thank you.
All right, well, yeah, as everyone said, I appreciate everybody coming. I stand firm on my commitment to keep North Logan a great place to live. I just believe we live in a great place, and I think we have a unique opportunity to preserve it and to keep it great. I'm committed to opposing zoning changes that would infringe on what we have in North Logan. I'm committed to transparency and helping the public to see what's happening within North Logan City. I'm committed to property rights. I strongly believe in the Constitution that we have and the great principles in it, and I'll fight to preserve them. I'll fight for each individual's property rights. I'll fight to protect them. And I'm committed to stopping wasteful spending. There's always ways we can save money, and I'm committed to finding those ways and to working to make the government as efficient as it can be, provide the services it needs to provide, and to provide it, just keep North Logan with all the things that we need to be a thriving community.
First of all, again, as everybody says, thanks for being here tonight. I also would like to thank everybody for their support over the terms that I have served. I think, you know, a lot of times people will say on the side, how do you put up with it? And I actually say opposite. That's why, you know, one reason I've decided to rerun is I enjoy it. I enjoy talking with people. I enjoy being involved in the decision-making of the city. So again, my vision for the future is to continue to promote shared accountability that we all have for each other. We have an accountability to city council, to you as those who entrust us and vote us in. You're hoping that your voice is being heard in and in some ways limited knowledge sometimes, again, being here. I think sometimes people look at a name and say, why, and go off the opinions. To me, it was kind of scary as some of the county votes that have happened. You have 200-300 people there, not very many people showing up, deciding who is doing your next thing. So again, where we can, have the voice of the people there, I think that's important. I also commit to, again, real world experience. I think if you look at the minutes of my decision make, I've made decisions based on what businesses have to do. We have to, can we pay for this? Do we need to provide the Cadillac of this? I've always asked questions like, could we do it better? I think sometimes everyone says, well, if you have a government job, it's, easy. And I don't believe that. I think you can apply, real sense business principles too. I think I do bring that. My degree is from human resources and managing businesses. So I commit to continuing doing that on the council, and would ask for your support in this next round.
Thank you so much. Just one more closing comment from Shelby and Mary Ellen.
We just want to thank each of the candidates for being here and for all the residents who came and participated tonight. Yes, we'd like to thank you all for coming, and we hope you have a wonderful evening.